Testing, are you there? So if I could call the meeting to order, please. And I'm going to ask to do something a little bit out of the ordinary on the schedule. Councillor Fleury has to leave us very shortly for an announcement related to his duties as vice chair, not vice chair, but co-chair of the 2017 celebrations. And he would like to deal with item number 2 before anything else. I believe it is going to go on consent. So I have 2 questions to ask. One is whether or not there's any issue with any committee members if we deal with that matter first to allow them to go to the other matter. I don't see any objection. The other is we have 2 speakers listed on there, and that is Sabrina Matthews and Christine Ledman. Oh, sorry, I'm getting them. It's Cora Craig. If it's going to go on consent, Ms. Craig, do you need to present? Okay, well, I think it will likely go on consent. Everybody's nodding their heads. Okay, Councillor Foley wants to say a couple of quick words.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to applaud 2 elements. One is the work of Norma and Alain Miguelez, our staff on the file. I think it's such an important. The Neighborhood Connections Office really has shown its success in my mind. This is a prime example of spaces that were used for front yard parking, cracked pavement. We've spoken to all of the owners. We're going to green the space, and not only is it going to it's going to showcase an important infrastructure connection between the Odawa crossing and the University of Ottawa Corktown Bridge. So really important initiative, and finally I also want to applaud the leadership of Action Sandy Hill, specifically Susan Young and the Tree Committee, who's really taken on the lead and also is coordinating the maintenance of the site. So we're looking forward to the implementation this summer, and we'll come back to committee to show its success in 2018. So I want to thank the group, thank the community, and I want to thank a committee as well for seeing such an item and allowing us to test a bit and see the progress. Finalement, Monsieur le Président, j'aimerais vous remercier pour votre appui sur ce dossier. Évidemment, c'est un petit projet pilote qui pourrait avoir des ampleurs d'importance dans l'avenir. Puis, évidemment, la communauté qui prend un leadership au niveau de la maintenance et puis du jardinage, je pense que c'est un pas dans la bonne direction. Merci.
I know Councillor Foley has to leave shortly. I'm going to keep this very, very brief, but I just want to echo some of his sentiments. I think this is a wonderful pilot project. It's about community engagement. It's about making part of our city greener, better to look at, and again, it's all with working with residents. And so I think it's a fabulous idea. I will absolutely be supporting it, and I'm hoping that it serves as a foundation when we hear back in 2018, that it serves as a foundation for other communities getting on board and entering into similar projects with the city. It shares the work of the city. It gives people a stake in how their neighborhoods look, how their communities operate. So again, I want to thank staff, and I want to thank the community for working together on this and coming up with this really innovative idea. And so can we carry this on consent then? Oh, sorry. There were 2 other speakers. There were Sabrina Matthews and one other speaker, sorry, Sabrina Matthews. Is Ms. Matthews here? Are you okay if we're carrying it on consent, not to present? Okay, thank you. So can we carry this on consent then? Okay, thank you very much. Pedal fast, Councillor Fleury. Now we'll go to the regular agenda. We have no regrets received. Councillor Middick indicated he may be a little bit late, but he'll be coming, and I think that Councillor Caudry will be stepping out for a few moments as well around the launch of our Accessibility Day, but then returning to us. No declarations of interest received. Confirmation of minutes of the 4th of May 2016. Carried. Item number 1 is the Airport Parkway, Brookfield Road to Ottawa McDonald Cartier International Airport, and Leicester Road Airport Parkway to Bank Street, widening environmental assessment study recommendations. We have a presentation, and we also have a number of delegations, so we're going to hold that matter. Number 2 is the greenscaping pilot project, which we just dealt with at Councillor Fleury's request. Number 3 is status update on Transportation Committee inquiries and motions for the period ending May the 20th, 2016. Received? Thank you. Next is a councillor item brought forward by the Vice Chair, Councillor McKenney, asking for a waiver of prohibiting provisions of the encroachment bylaw on Bank Street. We do have one speaker listed for this, and that is Christine Redman on behalf of the Bank Street BIA. I believe, so we will hold that matter then. You'd like to proceed with it? Christina's in favor. Is she in the room? Yes for an answer. She'll take yes for an answer, okay. Can we carry this matter on consent then? Okay, thank you. The next matter is brought by Councillor Blais, who I don't see in the room at this point, but it's the designation of a community safety zone on Portobello Boulevard, so we'll hold that until Councillor Blais can be here. And so we will go back to the item number 1 on our list then, which is a presentation to start with on the Airport Parkway widening. I propose that we have the presentation, then we have a number of delegations, that we deal with the delegations, and then we have questions to staff and discussion around the item after we've heard from the delegations and asked any questions of them. So I'm going to ask staff to come up. I think Frank McKinney will be leading the presentation, and then VVG will make herself available to answer some of the questions after the presentation. Morning, gentlemen, and I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, there we go. Good morning. I am Frank McKinney, Program Manager of Transportation Environmental Assessments, and I'm the project lead on this file. Next to me is Ron Clark, Manager of Urban Planning and Design from Parsons, our consultant team assisting us on the project. The widening of the Airport Parkway in Leicester are identified in the Council-approved Transportation Master Plan. The scope of the study and its undertakings were approved by Transportation Committee in May of 2014. It is a complex project, and we have a presentation summarizing the highlights. The scope of the project includes the widening of the Airport Parkway from Brookfield to the Ottawa International Airport, and the widening of Leicester Road from the Airport Parkway to Bank Street. Also included is a new off-ramp to Uplands, as well as a newer off-ramp onto Walkley Road, complete with Walkley Road modifications from the Airport Parkway to McCarthy Road. A multi-use pathway is included along the west side of the Airport Parkway widening and along the north side of the Leicester Road widening. Also included is noise attenuation at required locations and measures to preserve the natural environment. Okay. Airport Parkway is a 2-lane controlled access arterial roadway, complete with grade separations at Brookfield Road, CN Overpass, Walkley Road, Airport Parkway Pedestrian Bridge, Hunt Club Road, and Uplands Drive. Sawmill Creek Pathway runs along the east side of the parkway from Brookfield to Hunt Club. Access to the parkway is via off-ramps and on-ramps only. The airport parkway is designated as a scenic entry route in the official plan, a gateway to the city for all air passengers, a commuter route, and a spine cycling route. Leicester Road is a two-lane rural arterial roadway that travels through natural area wetlands, crossing the Alexander Drain. Residential development is located for the most part on the north side of Leicester between Albion Road and Bank Street. Leicester Road is a backdoor access to the airport from the south and the east, a commuter route linking Bank Street and Albion to the airport parkway, a truck route, and also a spine cycling route. As part of this EA, we had a broad consultation program, including agency, business, and consultation group meetings, public open houses with question and answer period, agency stakeholder meetings, presentations for community and special interest groups, noise mitigation meetings, consultation with First Nations, and the project website was updated throughout the study. The study has taken approximately a year and a half to complete. As part of this consultation, we have identified the following key issues. People question the need for the widening of the Airport Parkway and the Leicester Road. The public wanted to know the relationship between the widening of the Airport Parkway and the Trillium Line extension. They were concerned of how this proposed widening would affect traffic volumes downstream on Bronson. Why we were suggesting the need for the Walkley off-ramp. What implications this ramp would have on Walkley Road west of the Airport Parkway. Noise attenuation and air quality were also concerns. People also want to know what implications the widening would have on the wetlands. At this point, I will hand the presentation over to Ron Clark to explain how these key issues were addressed.
Thank you, Frank, and Mr. Chair. So the project the need for the widening of these two corridors was first most recently established in the city's transportation master plan in fall of 2013. So our job was to study this in more detail and to do so within the context of an environmental assessment. And on the screen here, there's a list of 9 points, which I'll touch on all of them. And these 9 points speak to our findings in the study in regards to the need for widening and the opportunities that it provides to the city and the communities along the corridors. So the first one is about improving the network and its connectivity. So of course the Parkway and Leicester Road are designated as arterial roads in the city's official plan, and these are the roads that are intended to carry the highest volumes of traffic over the longest distances. And that we have found that there is an opportunity to improve these corridors and add connections, which we'll talk about in a moment. Supporting growth and development of the city is a key consideration in the environmental assessment. In particular, we'd like to highlight the plans for growth and development at the Ottawa Airport, not just in passenger travel, but in the commercial development of the vast land holdings around the airport. And of course, the role that these corridors play in serving the southern growth areas of the city, Riverside South, Leitrim, Greeley, and the rural areas and beyond. Thirdly, and in no order of priority, there is an important role the corridors can play for active transportation, and the recommended plan, as you see in the report, features new multi-use pathways along both corridors. The study provided a great opportunity to coordinate with the environmental assessment of the Trillium Line, LRT, which was before you earlier. And and our work focused on how to connect a possible light rail link to the airport. And that location and its alignment and design was coordinated with this study. The next 3 points really speak to the capacity and the need for adding capacity to these corridors. It's about improving travel time for primarily motorists using the corridors, improving the dependability of the Parkway and Leicester Road, keeping in mind that these corridors today have only one lane in each direction. So we're really just talking about adding an additional lane to each, and that will include dependability and reliability should there be an accident or an event, as does happen on the corridors. And with this emphasis on improving capacity and reducing congestion, there's all opportunities that come with that in improving motorist safety and safety for all corridor users. Due to the context at the southern end of the city and the Greenbelt, protecting natural heritage has been a very important consideration. And we've had particular regard for the interests of the National Capital Commission and in the role that the Leicester Road Wetland Complex plays here in the region. And finally, at the bottom of the list, we're very mindful of the role that the Parkway in particular plays as a scenic entry route in an important corridor for visitors to the region who will continue to have this opportunity to travel from the airport area to the downtown areas in a green open space setting. For those interested in numbers, this chart is a summary, a snapshot of this need in a numeric sense. And at the top, we do note and want to emphasize all of our forecasts, of course, take into account the expected result from the notable investment in the Trillium Line. So the operation of the Trillium Line is built into our transportation forecasts. On the Airport Parkway, those of you many know who use it, perhaps around the table, it is at capacity, and in fact it is over capacity, and particularly the segment of the Parkway north of Hunt Club Road. So the capacity of that single lane is about 1,600 vehicles per hour. We're experiencing over 1,800 vehicles per hour today, and that's resulting in the congestion that you experience today. And that deficit of capacity is forecast to grow into the future. Leicester Road is a tale of two segments, west of Albion and east of Albion, and that is because Albion provides a route for travelers from the Leitrim area and beyond to access Leicester Road. So naturally, west of Albion Road, traffic volumes are a little higher. The capacity of the road at 1,200 vehicles per hour, we're over that capacity today, and again, projected to continue to grow in the future despite the investments in LRT. East of Albion is a little bit of a lesser functionality. It still plays an arterial road function. There's a little bit of excess capacity today, but we're projecting that capacity by the planning period, which was 2031, just 15 years from now, will also be exceeded. Early in our consultations, we attracted some very excellent feedback from communities downstream of the Parkway, so north of the Parkway. And we had focused meetings in April of 2015, just over a year ago. What this exhibit is attempting to show with these purple arrows is the functionality of the Airport Parkway at the north end. And what we know is that there is a very robust transportation network at the north end of the corridor. And the Parkway plays a role in distributing traffic to that network before reaching the downtown areas. So there's lots of exiting at Walkley Road, Brookfield, Heron, Riverside, and of course the employment areas at Carleton University, Confederation Heights, and in that sector. And on balance, there was a concern of what would this mean for Bronson Avenue, and our analysts have concluded a marginal increase of about 30 vehicles per hour, because as you know, Bronson has little capacity for additional traffic today, and we're not expecting the widening to result in attraction to Bronson. As I mentioned, we had this opportunity to coordinate the planning with the Trillium line. Just to put this into a temporal sense, the Trillium line is in stage 2 of your LRT rollout to be delivered in this window 2018 to 2023. The Parkway, on the other hand, was recently deferred, considering budget pressure, to 2020 to 2025, so slightly later, although there are some opportunity to be before, and that's a choice related to timing and capital investment. That's the north part of the Parkway. That's north of Hunt Club. South of Hunt Club and Leicester Road is beyond 2025. So that's beyond the 10-year window. Our plans very early in the process recommended a connection, a southbound connection to Walkley Road with an off-ramp from the Parkway. And we knew this would gather quite a bit of interest from the community, and we were successful in doing so. So we had very focused meetings, very focused discussions with the communities on either side of Walkley Road, west of the Parkway. The 3 reasons we continue to recommend the Walkley connection are that it provides an opportunity to connect that community to the Parkway. And this distance between Brookfield and Hunt Club, it's over 3 kilometers. There's no opportunity to exit the Parkway. And we believe it provides another travel route for people in the community. There is a notable and well understood community cut-through traffic issue on Flannery and Springland Drive. And it is our view this connection would alleviate a good amount of that cut-through traffic through that community. And finally, we heard from the emergency service providers in the region who confirm the advantage to the city and community of providing a connection to Walkley for emergency service access to the communities and improving response times. While we opened this discussion of Walkley Road, we saw the opportunity to recommend modifications to Walkley Road as well. And these 6 points try to tell that story, where we would recommend Walkley be modified from 2 lanes in each direction to 1 lane in each direction between McCarthy and the Parkway, and to use the space provided to provide segregated cycling lanes on Walkley Road, which will improve connectivity across to the Parkway and to the LRT station planned at Walkley on the Trillium line. On the slide previous, we showed the roundabout, which you've seen in the report, which is our proposed way of connecting with Walkley Road, and that will provide an opportunity to integrate the crossing of the multi-use pathway proposed across Walkley. And on balance, we believe this plan will result in a bit of a traffic calming effect on Walkley Road, a gateway effect with the roundabout for motorists coming from the east. Access to properties will be provided by a center left turn lane, many driveways. And on balance, we believe this will result in an improved living environment for the residents, which we heard quite a bit about from those individuals. Noise mitigation was, of course, a very important part of our technical analyses as part of the environmental assessment, and we received some very excellent input from the communities, particularly north of Walkley Road, along streets like Ramsgate and Cromwell, with their aspiration for us to move the Parkway as far east as possible. And their input resulted in us amending our preliminary drawings and shifting the Parkway as far to the east as we possibly could, given the topography and the landscape in that area. And our noise studies recommended the installation of noise barriers in certain locations, which I'll show you on the next slide. So the upper exhibit reflects the airport Parkway at scale for the areas such as along Cromwell and further to the south along Plant Drive, just north of Hunt Club. You may be able to see in brown, or with my little pointer here, I'm demonstrating the location of the recommended noise barrier wall, and the plan is to set it back into the sort of the edge of the forest, have a green area in front of the wall, which will provide an opportunity for planting that would have the effect of concealing the wall along the forest edge and making it rather inconspicuous to the visual environment. And this was favored by those that we heard, rather than putting it in the people's backyard and having quite an effect on the forested area for its installation process. This distance here we're showing, it ranges between 35 to 45 meters along these closest residences on the parkway. Leicester Road is a little different story. There's a couple areas where noise mitigation is warranted, and again, the wall is proposed to be near the source of the noise out in the road corridor alongside the pathway. As I mentioned, impacts on the natural features were quite important, as this is a green open space environment at the south end of the city. We worked very closely with the NCC to confirm the strategy for minimizing impacts to the natural environment, which really include keeping the design very compact and having a low footprint on the landscape. A lot of attention being paid to, as you see in these images, eco passages and wildlife crossing points, sustainable drainage techniques, and new plantings to mitigate the impact of the construction. This is just on balance a repeat of the 9 points that I've made in my presentation, and I would like to close with a couple of concluding remarks. Again, these 9 points are the key reasons in support of the recommended plan, and they demonstrate the opportunity that can be achieved by the investment in the widening of the Airport Parkway in Leicester Road. Our environmental assessment studies have confirmed the need for the widening, the need for the facilities, have reviewed a number of alternatives, have landed with a recommended plan, has built in mitigation into the plan, and in our view, when implemented, the plan will not result in significant environmental effects. On a more personal note, and on behalf of Frank, I think it's a good opportunity for us to thank the many participants in the study process from across the southern end of the city and even through the downtown area for their contribution to this important civic dialogue. And I'd like to thank them and all the participants for their very extremely professional and cordial nature of how the comments were made and inputted into the process. Would also like to give special thanks to the government agencies involved, including the National Capital Commission, who again we had extremely productive and fruitful and cordial relationships with in coming up with this plan, because it does impact their lands physically, and there will be a land exchange as part of the final detailed design. So thank you for your attention, Mr. Chair and members of committee, and I believe now we're ready for question and answers.
Thank you very much. As I indicated earlier, we're going to go to the public delegations first, and then we'll circle back to you guys for questions and discussion. So in the delegations, first delegation is Pierre Munier and Barbara Ursel, and they will be followed by Terry Wood. So if Pierre and Barbara could come up, please. Thank you. Good morning. So you have 5 minutes to make your presentation. I know that you've already circulated a submission, so thank you for that. And we'll turn the mic over to you then.
Thank you. My name is Pierre Meunier.
And I'm Barbara Ursul.
We live northeast of Leicester in Albion intersection on the north side of Leicester, marked with a red dot on the attached map. We're opposed to the widening of Leicester Road.
The recommendation to widen the segment of Leicester Road from the Airport Parkway to Bank Street from 2 to 4 lanes is seriously flawed. It's at odds with earlier recommendations. It's based on questionable assumptions, and it's subject to an important caveat that hasn't been disclosed to you. First, our written presentation references the 21 November 2014 Project Need and Justification Report prepared for the city by Parsons, because it was sent to us in March by City Planner Mr. Frank McKinney. This report concluded on page 38, and I quote, "Based on the 2031 projected traffic volumes, the widening of Leicester Road between Bank and Albion is not considered necessary." Unfortunately, only yesterday, Mr. McKinney informed us that he'd sent us an outdated version. The 30th of May 2016 version, 2 days old and well after the close of the public consultation period, was sent to us only yesterday. As you can imagine, we're more than a little frustrated with the city's process. The new report now recommends widening between Albion and Bank. However, it comes with an important caveat that has not been mentioned to you. The new report says that a widening of this section, and I quote from page 42, may not be essential if drivers opt to use Albion Road as a means to access Leicester. In such a case, it says that traffic volume along the segment of Leicester between Albion and Bank would likely decrease. How can you possibly reconcile this with the recommendation to spend $9 million on widening Leicester between Bank and Albion? Given the time limitation we face today, we can't elaborate on the shortcomings of the recommendation, but we ask you to consider 4 things. First, the recommendation contradicts the 2014 version of the Project Needs and Justification Report. 2, it also contradicts the trans-model projections for 2031. 3, it seems to be based on a rather tenuous bumping up of the growth rate from the trans report. And 4, it does not take into account the latest advice that a widening of this section may not be essential if drivers opt to use Albion Road. We do acknowledge that the widening of Leicester from Albion to the Airport Parkway has been consistently recommended in studies. However, the segment between Albion and Bank is very different. As Mr. Wood said, it's truly a tale of 2 segments, and this segment borders on much more populated property. City staff and consultants should have considered an alternative only to widen Leicester from Albion to the Airport Parkway, but the list of alternatives that were examined shows that this was not done. So we submit you cannot rationally recommend widening Leicester in its totality, because to do so would be to spend $9 million of taxpayers' money on widening a segment of the road that's been subject to so many contradictory recommendations and tenuous assumptions and is likely not necessary.
There are many other reasons why you shouldn't recommend the widening of Leicester Road. Assuming there's a need to connect southern communities, there are other potentially preferable options that haven't yet been adequately studied. First, the city should put public transportation options ahead of road widening. Second, even if there remains any need for wider roads to connect these communities with the Airport Parkway, city officials should investigate options to keep widened roads further away from residential areas. One such option is the widening of Leitrim and Albion south of Leicester, which is less populated instead of Leicester. Another possibility is an Albion Road bypass. A city transportation official informed us that the NCC was willing to review the cumulative impact study to include Albion Road. This city official was confident that that would happen to inform the next Transportation Master Plan update in 2017. It's our understanding that Councillor Deans also favors thorough exploration of these other options. With the possibility of better options available in the near term that were outside the scope of this EA, it makes sense for you to recommend to Council that the portion of the EA concerning the widening of Leicester not be approved. Finally, we echo all of Councillor Dean's concerns about the widening of Leicester between Albion and Bank, including concerns about safety, environmental impact, and loss of enjoyment of our property. In the interest of time, we'll not repeat them, but they affect us personally and profoundly. Thank you for your attention, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. I have a quick question, and I think Councillor Deans has a question. So just so I understand your presentation, you start off by saying you were against the project, and then almost all of your comments were in and around Leicester. So are you against the whole of the widening project, which is 3 phases, or you simply have concerns around the Leicester piece?
So what we stated was we were opposed to the widening of Leicester Road. We have made no comments on the Airport Parkway. And if the only way that you can consider the project is to consider Leicester in its totality as part of this EA, then yes, we're opposed to the widening of Leicester. Our specific comments, as you heard correctly, were focused on the errors and the risks between the segment between Leicester and Bank. If I could just add, in our discussions to date with City Council, and Mr. Woods echoed this today, it truly is, Leicester's a tale of 2 segments. The segment between Albion and Bank was described to us in many past meetings as the poor cousin of this whole EA proposal. And we'd submit, I don't think it's even a cousin. I don't think there's any DNA that brings it into the family. And in terms of a family reunion, it should be chucked out. It doesn't belong in this. It has very different, it's rural. You saw the photos. It's very different. It's in our backyards. And to spend this kind of money on a segment like that is unwarranted. The proper time is to look at the Transportation Master Plan, which is literally, as we understand it, up for revision right around the corner in 2017.
Okay, thank you for that. Just 2 quick clarifications. We actually are not doing the Transportation Master Plan 2017. It's actually quite a few years beyond that, as it's tied to the official plan, and so that's not accurate, but you're quite right. We will be reviewing it again, but not nearly that soon. The other piece is, we're not voting on spending any money at all today. What we're voting on today is to accept the EA and its recommendations. The when and if the particular pieces of the project go ahead, that will be dealt with on a budget-by-budget basis as it comes forward. And I think the first piece of work on this particular EA, the earliest it could come to discussion around spending any money on it, and I'm looking at VDG here, would be 2020 or 2021. Is that correct, Ms. Chief?
Chair, the phasing would be in between 2020 and 2025.
Okay, so thank you for that. Councillor Deans.
Well, Barbara and Pierre, thanks for being here. I think you made a lot of important points, and we're not asking questions to staff at this point, but I just wanted to tell you I will follow up on the questions that you have raised about that. The piece of Leicester Road between Albion and Bank was only inserted into the TMP in 2010, so it's highly unusual that already it's the subject of an EA and a recommendation for that widening. So as you saw my comments in the report, I would not support the funding of that. We can't piecemeal an EA, so in order to approve it, apparently we have to approve the whole thing. But when it gets to the point of funding that section of the road, I would not support that, and hopefully my colleagues won't either. So I'll pursue what other avenues might be available, perhaps removing it from the TMP at the next TMP update. But I completely concur with you that that section is unnecessary, and it's $9 million better spent on other modes of transportation. So thank you for being here.
Are there any other questions for the delegation? Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate you coming down. And the next speaker, as I indicated, is Terry Wood, who will be representing the West Walkley Road Action Committee, the Cromwell Group, and the Riverside Park Southeast Neighbors Association. And he will be followed by Mr. Bryson Kuno. Good morning, sir. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. I'm pleased to make this presentation on behalf of the three groups. We submitted it yesterday to committee staff, so I hope that committee members have that presentation, and we'd certainly encourage you to take a close look at it. I'd like to start by welcoming the information that the city has provided, and staff, Mr. McKinney and others, in the public consultations held on the proposed project over the last several years. My comments are a summary of our four main concerns which are set forth in the written brief. As I said, we encourage you to look at it for more detailed explanations. Our three groups represent concerned taxpayers living in the neighborhoods that will be directly affected by Phase 1 of the proposed projects. Many of our members live in close proximity to the parkway, indeed some within 100 feet or less, and we are already experiencing the detrimental effects of existing traffic flows, both on the Parkway, West Walkley Road, and Riverside Drive. The proposed project is an important issue that will significantly affect our quality of life. These public consultations and transparency are important, and the project should only proceed with the support of the communities directly affected. Many significant traffic safety problems already exist and will be exacerbated by the widening of the Parkway, and especially the proposed West Walkley off-ramp. Action is needed now, regardless of the status and timing of the proposed project. Our basic proposal, our basic ask to the committee today, after having studied carefully the environmental assessment and the recommended plan, is to request respectfully that the committee defer action on the proposed motion under this agenda item until our concerns are better addressed and the recommended plan for the proposed project is amended accordingly. We have four major concerns about the proposed project, and I'd like to give you a quick summary of these four major concerns. First, give top priority to construction of the LRT Trillium Line South, including a spur to the airport, and in this regard, not proceed with the Parkway widening until such time as the Trillium Line is in operation and its impact on traffic flows on the Parkway is better assessed. To elaborate, we strongly support the Mayor's view that the immediate priority should be the extension of the Trillium Line further south with a link to the airport. This is the most sustainable long-term approach to address increasing traffic and congestion and to improve access to the airport. It has many advantages. It addresses city transportation and environmental priorities, which in our view, neither the recommended plan nor the evaluation of alternative options adequately takes into account. It would be a strong incentive for commuters and other travelers to use the new LRT line after it's built at considerable expense. It would free up revenue from development charges to be better used either to help support a Trillium spur line to the airport or for other higher priority projects for which there are no alternative transportation or funding options. It's also inspired leadership. We are a national capital, and few national capitals have LRT service to their international airport. So this is a real opportunity for you, the committee, for council, and the City of Ottawa to showcase our national capital. In comparison, widening an existing road is old thinking that merely compounds existing congestion and other problems. In this regard, we strongly support Councillor Chernyshenko's view that the proposed approach contradicts the city's policy priorities and strongly support his skepticism about the marginal impact it will have on the northern section of Bronson and agree that, quote, the analysis to support this conclusion is not convincing, unquote. More study is needed. Accordingly, The recommended plan should include a rigorous multi-year traffic monitoring program to establish whether traffic volumes and delays being experienced during rush hours are in fact increasing according to the projections used in the environmental assessment. Our second major group of concerns is about noise mitigation. Better measures are needed in this regard and should be included in the recommended plan when and if Phase 1 goes forward. As noted by Councillor Brockington, noise pollution from the Parkway is already a problem, and noise mitigation measures are, quote, needed now and not in some sections along the Parkway, but along the entire stretch up to Hunt Club, unquote. Noise will get significantly worse with the Parkway's widening. Therefore, it is essential that any expansion of the Parkway be accompanied by adequate noise mitigation measures. We are particularly concerned that the recommended plan provides for a noise barrier in the form of a wall, quote, only where warranted, unquote, which in Phase 1 means only towards the north end of the Parkway. This is insufficient, and so is a wall.
So I'm going to have to ask you to wrap up, please.
Okay. Thank you. So we need better noise mitigation. In particular, our third concern is about the West Walkley off-ramp. There are no benefits for this in our view. We strongly oppose it. It raises questions about process and transparency because it was not included in the initial environmental assessment or in the transportation plan. It will greatly exacerbate existing cut-through traffic. Therefore, we ask that it be subject to a separate decision if it cannot be deleted from the plan. Lastly,
sorry, sir, you're now almost a minute and a half over time, so I am going to have to ask you to wrap up, please.
Just to conclude, there are a number of traffic safety concerns that need to be addressed now. The calming measures are welcome, but they should be consulted further and decided upon in consultation with the community. They should go from the Parkway all the way to Riverside Drive, not just to McCarthy. Lastly, we would like to see West Walkley Road de-designated as an arterial road. Truck traffic is not allowed now. Traffic calming would be inconsistent with the traffic safety efforts. So it should be de-designated. And we certainly agree with the comments that we just heard and Councillor Dean's comments about the...
I'm going to have to ask you to there are other people waiting to speak, and you're 2 minutes over, so I don't know if there's any questions for the delegation. I have a quick question. You're representing a whole bunch of different groups, some of which I'm familiar with, some of which I'm not. What exactly is the Cromwell group?
The three groups represent, first of all, those living on or near West Walkley Road. Cromwell Group represents concerned citizens living north of West Walkley between Riverside and the Parkway. Just like the Riverside Park Southeast Neighbours Association represents those living south of West Walkley.
So Cromwell Group is a community association in effect?
Yes.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. I think Councillor Brockington has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Wood, for your joint submission on behalf of the three groups that you've touched upon. Could you just elaborate for me and for this committee the southbound off-ramp at Walkley Road that you touched upon both in your report and briefly today? My understanding is you do have some concerns that there will be ramifications on the community. Could you just elaborate for the committee?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Brockington. Cut-through traffic is already a big problem for West Walkley. The off-ramp is projected to add up to 150 vehicles an hour, I believe, according to the projections. This will greatly exacerbate existing cut-through problems as well as traffic safety on West Walkley Road. We are very skeptical that traffic westbound on West Walkley, coming off of the new south ramp, will stay on West Walkley and go to Riverside or other points to the west. There's already a problem with traffic coming off of West Walkley and going down Southmore Drive East, Thorndale, in an effort to get to McCarthy Road, avoiding the lights at McCarthy and West Walkley. So it will greatly exacerbate existing cut-through problems. I'd like to note in particular that it's very difficult to cross West Walkley Road for a pedestrian. There are only lights at Avincourt and I believe 1 point further west besides McCarthy. There's a lot of children who walk along the streets to get to OC Transpo Route 146. There's a lot of senior citizens that are avid walkers, and there are no sidewalks except for West Walkley Road itself. So, if you're out walking, you're constantly avoiding cars. It's difficult to cross West Walkley. And lastly, major new housing developments are proposed at both ends of West Walkley Road. The Bayview lands at the west end, close to Riverside Drive, and the new condominium tower by the Shoppers Drug Mart at the east end. So the off-ramp will exacerbate all of this. Connectivity already exists through the southbound on-ramp. There are other transportation options. Bottom line is that for the residents of our communities, there are no benefits. Thank you.
Brockney, any further questions? Any other questions for the delegation? Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Our next presenter is Bryson Kuno, and following Bryson is Krista Keeley and Alexander Stecki-Afantis. Good morning, Mr. Kuno. You have, I hope I said that right? Yes. You have also having a four-letter name that people sometimes get wrong, so I try and be as careful as I can. You have 5 minutes to present, and then there may be questions following.
I'm here just representing the Cromwell Group, which is the group of residents that live between Walkley Road and Brookfield, where the Airport Expressway goes right through our backyard in the existing situation. I'm here just to piggyback a bit on what Mr. Woods has presented this morning. We agree with all of his comments. We agree with the comments from the previous presenters on Leicester Road. We're concerned about the increase in the parkway, increase in various volumes of traffic that will move toward that area by obviously increasing road potential there. We're concerned about the fact that one of the proposals that we would prefer is to consider developing the Alta Vista Parkway that has been in the master plan for years. And the Alta Vista Parkway would actually connect from the General Hospital through to those communities south Finley Creek that needs to create obviously more volumes of traffic to the south. And we're asking that the committee will defer the EA approval based on the expansion. We're asking for the expansion of the Trillium Line and the results of the Trillium Line to be in and how it affects our neighborhoods directly. Based on the TMP report of 2013, we're concerned with the fact that the driver-only vehicles that are represented on the parkway are about approximately 54.6% of individuals that are commuting, and we feel that if there was an expanded Trillium Line with park and ride in the south, it would alleviate a huge amount of that traffic, and the necessary spending would be delegated in a better direction by expanding that Trillium Line. I'm here. I have petitions of 175 people in our neighborhood who are asking the same thing. They're asking to have the EA and the development of the parkway to be deferred until there's results of that Trillium line come in to show us that public transit is not the answer and that more traffic, more roads would be the answer. So I would like to leave these for someone, and that's basically my presentation.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for the delegation? I'm just curious. You said you have 175 names on the petition. Do you know how many of those 175 came out to the various community consultations that we had and expressed their views at that time while the report was being prepared?
I don't have the ratio of how many, but we went through the neighborhood and we canvassed the people on Cromwell Drive in the neighborhood associated with beside the parkway, and this is the we had a large number of the contingency that did attend the Jim Durrell conference or the committee.
Okay, thank you for that. Again, any questions for the delegation? Okay, thank you. The next presenters, as I said, are Krista Keeley and Alexander Stekiafantis, followed by Bruce Rossov. Good morning. I understand you're here today on behalf of the airport.
We are.
And you've been here before, so you know the rules.
We do.
So I'll turn the mic over to you.
Super. I'm joined by my colleague, Alex Stekiafantis, our Manager of Airport Planning and Municipal Affairs. Thank you for the opportunity to address the committee regarding the Airport Authority's support of the Airport Parkway and Leicester Road Widening Environmental Assessment Report. I would first like to congratulate the city's project team on their comprehensive report and thank them for including us in the consultation process and for considering the airport's future expansion needs. The Authority's vision is to be the world-class gateway for Canada's capital region and an economic engine that drives prosperity for our community. Our mission is to be a leader in providing quality, safe, secure, sustainable, and affordable air transportation services to the airport's customers and communities, and a driver of economic growth within the region. To fully realize both, we need safe, efficient, and predictable access by road for our passengers, visitors, and employees. The parkway was originally designed to offer access to the airport from the city centre and other parts of Ottawa. It was never intended to be a commuter corridor. But as development to the south has increased over the past 15 years, so has the volume of non-airport related traffic that uses this route every day. Studies show that the existing peak directional volumes on sections of the parkway already meet or exceed the assumed road capacity, and there are operational issues at the Hunt Club on and off ramps and where the parkway narrows at Brookfield. I use the parkway every day, and backups on the Hunt Club on-ramp in the morning and bumper-to-bumper traffic from Brookfield to Hunt Club in the afternoon are daily sights. And while residential development to the south may not be growing as quickly as earlier forecasts indicated, we have forecasted growth at roughly 65%, or 3 million passengers, over the study period. As such, we can anticipate an increase in the number of residents and visitors who require access to the airport by virtue of our growth, which will mean corresponding delays. Our ardent support of parkway widening in no way diminishes our equally ardent belief in the need for light rail access to the airport. Light rail transit and roadway widening cannot be mutually exclusive. And as the EA demonstrated, even with optimistic LRT ridership factored in, roadway improvements are necessary. All it takes is one missed morning meeting in the city or a return flight at the end of the business day to leave a lasting impression. Without efficient and predictable access, affected passengers may find alternatives to air travel, or worse, find other cities in which to conduct their business. A negative experience not only affects business travel, it makes Ottawa less attractive as a tourism destination, both of which can have a negative economic impact on our city. To that end, we are pleased to have the support of the Ottawa Chamber of Commerce and Ottawa Tourism for both airport parkway widening and a light rail airport link. The Council approved shared vision for Ottawa's economic development between the City and the Airport Authority identifies an opportunity to support, promote, and enhance economic development by advocating for transportation infrastructure investments that meet current and future needs of travelers. This project embodies the spirit of that shared vision. The proposed widening will increase the efficiency, dependability, and safety of the parkway for the benefit of the community and airport users. The proposed median will address the high number of U-turn-related collisions, and the multi-use pathway will provide a safe pedestrian and cycling pathway. Despite these positives, there are a few areas that continue to cause concern, as communicated to the project team over the past 2 years. First, there are issues with timing. Deferring the project, as announced in the City's 2016 budget, will have negative consequences for the airport and cause a ripple effect in our customer experience. Ours is the only international airport serving this region, and our success is the City's success. Roadwork projects are happening across the City, so we ask that this critical corridor get the priority it merits by doing it sooner. Stage 2 of the LRT construction project is scheduled to start in 2018. Not having additional lanes on the parkway in the section from Brookfield to Hunt Club, where the existing O-train service operates, may place additional pressure on the parkway, a roadway that is already at capacity during peak traffic periods. We would like the City to clarify how the issue of extra traffic during peak construction months will be addressed, since it is not covered in the report. Our second concern pertains to phasing. The schedule currently has Hunt Club to Leicester Road as the third and final phase. This means that 2 lanes from Leicester and 1 lane from the airport will be funneled into a single northbound lane of traffic on the parkway during the morning rush hour. Similar delays will happen southbound in the afternoon at Hunt Club, making travel to and from the airport even more challenging for our passengers. In closing, I would like to reiterate that widening the parkway is an essential component of the multimodal transportation system that is a prerequisite to accommodating growth in both air travel and the economy of Canada's capital region. Coupled with an airport link in LRT Phase 2, we will be well on our way to achieving a world-class transportation system for our world-class city. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for the delegation? Councillor Brockington.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning to both of you. Thank you for coming. Just first clarification on a stat that you mentioned. I think you said you're expecting a 65% growth during the study period. Could you just clarify what's the time range there?
Yeah, so we have annual passenger forecasts, and right now we're a 4.6 million passenger a year airport, and by 2031 we're expected to grow to almost 7 million passengers a year.
Thank you for that. You talked about putting greater priority on this project. You elaborated on the reasons why that should be the case, and I appreciate that. You mentioned your support for the project. You did not touch upon the southbound off-ramp at Walkley Road. In the past, when Hunt Club was being considered, the southbound off-ramp at Hunt Club Road, the airport was publicly opposed to that. My understanding was you were concerned that this would draw more cars onto the parkway and, again, slow commuter times down, ultimately getting to the airport. Has the airport taken a position on the proposal to build a southbound off-ramp at Walkley Road?
No, we have not taken a position on that particular issue.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brockington. Any other questions for the delegation? Okay. Thank you very much for coming down.
Thank you.
Next is Bruce Rossov, and Bruce is followed by Chantal Dupuis. Morning, Bruce. You have 5 minutes.
Morning. I'm on the air. I want to start by congratulating Council. Council has done something that I consider extremely important, and that is that it passed a policy to reduce greenhouse gases by 80% below 2012 levels over the next quite a few years. That policy was passed just at the end of the environmental assessment process, and so it was not taken into account when the assessment of this widening was being developed. And I would suggest that that's an important consideration for members of this committee to take into account when they vote on this proposal. One of the key strategies that the city has developed to lower our GHG emissions is a much improved transit system. Part of that transit system is the Trillium Line. And as you know, the Trillium Line, are you guys listening? Sorry.
If I can explain, Councillor Fleury was at a 2017 announcement, and he just asked for a quick update on what we've heard so far.
And you heard that we shouldn't build this road at all, right?
I didn't say quite that, but I said there was a different opinion.
But I was kind of distracted.
No, that's fine. No problem, Bruce. I just wanted to come up to date.
So a key element in the reduction of GHGs is building transit, because we know transit moves people at a much lower GHG emission level than cars do. Widening the airport parkway conflicts with the policy, and the airport parkway runs parallel to the Trillium Line. So for this reason, I am, and many others, and I should say, since I sent this to you earlier, I've had an endorsement by Ecology Ottawa for the proposals that I'm making here. I'm making the following 4 proposals. 1A, that no work on the widening of the airport parkway take place for at least 3 years after the Trillium Line is completed and in operation. This would allow the city to measure the impact of the Trillium Line on car traffic volumes. 1B, that the city develop and implement a promotional campaign to encourage use of the Trillium Line. 2A, that protected cycling routes to all Trillium Lines be constructed to allow people to cycle safely to Trillium Line stations. These protected cycling routes should allow people to access the station from a radius of 5 kilometers. I'm not talking about a pathway beside the transitway. I'm talking about a pathway that feeds people into the stations. 2B, that ample lock-up stands for bicycles be installed at all Trillium Line stations to accommodate cyclists. 3, that a continuing assessment of volumes of traffic from the southern areas of the city be carried out to monitor traffic and transit volumes to establish whether the traffic volumes delays are truly increasing according to the projections used in these EAs. These actual numbers should be publicly reported. And finally, that no widening of the airport parkway should take place unless evidence that shows that serious car traffic congestion is occurring. Now, I just want to also mention that the idea for the feeder routes, the feeder bike lanes, comes from some reading I did by the Portland Bureau of Transportation's bicycle program, estimated that making public transit more friendly and accessible for cyclists increased the capture area of transit investments 12-fold, because cycling extends the potential reach of the transit network so greatly. So what I'm asking Council and this committee to do is a paradigm shift. We've got to stop building roads to solve all our transportation problems. I'm sure members of the committee are familiar with the concept of induced demand. When you build more lanes, it creates more, it induces people to drive more. So just building the lanes is going to make more traffic happen. Pollutants. How many here would turn their car on in a closed garage and stay in the car? That's what we're doing, except we're not in the garage. We're out and we're throwing it in. So I take exception to Mr. Clark's comment that building this road has no negative environmental impact. Building roads has no negative environmental impact. Cars kill I was amazed by this number. I got it from Stats Canada. 2,000 people a year. Kill 2,000 people a year. And they injure 170,000 people a year. Unbelievable. I'll close by saying that I have support from high places. The mayor in January was quoted in the Ottawa Citizen saying that we should wait to do the airport widening, parkway widening, until after the Trillium line is completed. I'm taking that a little farther. I'm saying let's make sure it's been running for a while, and I'm suggesting 3 years, because it takes time for people to change their habits. And that's why I want the promotional campaign as well. That completes my presentation.
Thank you very much. I don't know if there's any other questions, but I have a quick question for you. You had indicated during your presentation that you didn't think the project should be built unless there was clear evidence of congestion.
That's right.
Or something to that effect. So I guess what I want clarification on, are you suggesting that we have to have the congestion before we build and we can't rely on projections of what we think is going to happen, or we can rely on projections and be proactive to get ahead of the congestion? That's what I'm trying to figure out.
It's a fair question. I think it's a judgment call, and I think you have to look at what the impact of the promotion campaign, the segregated bike lanes, and the LRT, or somebody told me it's not light trail because but the Trillium line, and for that matter, any other transit we develop. I think as I said, we need to take a different perspective. We need to stop thinking that every time we have a problem, we have to build more car lanes. Another man that's been working with me on this has been talking a lot about increasing the transit capacity of Riverside Drive. So no, I don't think yes, I do think we have to find other solutions besides building more car lanes. It just doesn't work.
Okay, but that's not the question I asked. The question I asked is, do you think the report as it's done and the projected congestion in traffic is insufficient?
Yes, I think
so. We should wait until the streets are actually congested, then do a study, then figure out a solution.
No, I think we should be doing ongoing studies from now until we see what happens. And I'm saying we need at least 3 years after the Trillium line is built to know whether the Trillium line will alleviate will change how can I put this? I can't think of a polite way to say it. Will put a lie to the projections of the environmental assessment.
So just one, and then Councillor Deans' question, so just so I fully understand, so you're not suggesting that the predictions or the projections that staff and consultant have put into the report are inaccurate. What you're saying is you would tackle that congestion in a different way.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
So you're not saying that congestion isn't an issue, you're saying you deal with it differently.
I'm saying that we need to move people in the city in more environmentally friendly ways, and we have to be creative in how we do that. One solution is transit, another one is cycling.
But we agree that we have to find a better way to move people.
Absolutely.
Okay, fair enough. Councillor Deans.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Just want to follow up on the point that the Chair was raising with you about clear evidence of...
Sorry, I'm having trouble hearing.
Sorry, I just want to follow up on the question that the Chair was raising with you about your comment about clear evidence of congestion. Mm-hmm. Are you a user of the Airport Parkway?
On occasion.
So would you say that there is clear evidence of congestion on the Airport Parkway between Brookfield and Hunt Club?
The only time I've noticed congestion on the Airport Parkway was in the late afternoon, and the congestion was caused because Hunt Club is choked, and people who are trying to get off the Parkway onto Hunt Club are backed up onto the Parkway. So frankly, widening the Parkway isn't going to solve that problem.
So would you, but just to be clear, you have noticed clear evidence of congestion between Brookfield and Hunt Club?
I've seen it congested once or twice.
Okay,
That's
because
not
I've
clear
seen
evidence.
it congested daily.
I have not
that
seen it
case.
daily. You may have, I have not.
Well, I live out there, and I can tell you that is a juggernaut that exists on a daily basis.
Yeah, and I'm suggesting that widening the Parkway won't solve it because the problem is on Hunt Club.
There is a pinch point at Hunt Club that backs up all the way to Brookfield. Thank you.
Councillor Nussbaum. Actually, Chair, it's a question to staff arising from the delegation.
We're holding questions for staff until after the delegations. Are there any other questions for the delegation? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Chantal Dupuis is the next speaker, and Chantal is followed by Graham Sibthorpe.
Good morning, members of the committee. I'm here today as a concerned resident. I live in the area of West Walkley, the perfect neighborhood. I found there a superior quality of life. It has everything to make it pristine. But lately, many concerns arose concerning your transportation master plan. What is most striking about it is that what's described in it doesn't reflect its execution. This plan is the base for every decision making in the city planning, which raises both my eyebrows because it seems to be set in cement, regardless of what residents actually want for their or need for their neighborhood. Your plan mentions the importance of complete streets, identifies how the road network will expand while making it safer and more efficient to move people and goods, and lastly describes ways that the city will work to reduce the impact of roads and traffic on neighborhood and the environment. Then the planners estimate the Walkley off-ramp will increase traffic at an average of 150 cars per hour. Between the lines, an average means that it will be more than 150 cars per hour on peak hours. Sorry. It's already impossible, next to impossible, to engage on West Walkley on peak hours, or even to cross it as pedestrians. I'm sorry because I crossed off to make it shorter. And last night I went to a meeting and we even learned that there was no traffic assessment to build the biggest playground in Mooney's Bay on top of what your master plan is planning for us. Your plan is entirely based on accommodating the suburbs where people fled because they preferred it to raise their family. It's their choice, but in order to please them in their dream, you are willing to sacrifice the quality of life in our neighborhood. In resume, because the city fell to the planning of the suburbs before developing them, city residents now have to pay the price, even though your plan mentions the protection and improvement of quality of life for residents as part of the plan. Your master plan clearly indicates that since 1986, the number of cars arriving downtown in the morning peak period has decreased while the number of people arriving downtown has increased. For this reason, future planning of the downtown transportation system will focus on improving the capacity and quality of service for people rather than private vehicles. And we are gathered here today regarding the parkway widening, even though the mayor said the widening would wait after the train line is built. You are here still following the master plan timeline when in fact it should be revised and take into consideration the residents' proposition and oppositions. Regarding the LRT, the master plan mentions that experts estimate that while population will reach 1.14 million residents by 2031, they consider a one-track train line will be sufficient. And they also think that electrifying the train line is not part of the vision. When your master plan brags about cleaner air, more energy-efficient modes of transportation, reduction in gas emission, and your experts don't consider the train electrification as an option before 2031, I understand here that your master plan experts might not be the visionaries the city needs. Still, in the plan, it's written, make the best possible use of existing facilities before adding new infrastructure. For starter, the bus routes should be redesigned accordingly. For example, Bank Street is a route so major that it runs from the Parliament to the St. Lawrence River, but there's no direct bus line available to downtown and southern suburb, which would already palliate the problem of the train line that is not built yet. Last year, at the environmental assessment public meeting, a man proposed to build 3 lanes instead of 4. This idea was never to be heard about afterward, but this proposal would be a good compromise and would save money in the construction costs. The city wouldn't even have to rebuild existing overpass along the parkway. During your public consultation, twice I pointed to your committees that the better synchronization of the traffic light at exit.
I'm going to have to ask you to wrap up, please.
I'm almost there, sir.
Okay, sorry. Thank you.
I pointed that the synchronization, just that simple fact, when you exit the parkway, which creates the congestion you're all complaining about, well, just rethink how the lights are synchronized there, and you're going to find your solution to your problem. I really feel like you consult with the public because you're obliged to by law, but you dismiss residents' simple, cost-effective solution, even though your master plan clearly indicates to encourage public input, to provide opportunity for dialogue, and to consult with the public when planning budgets, programs, and projects. Residents should be better listened to in the end. We are the ones who have to pay the bills. We are the ones who are supposed to have priority in all of your planning, decision-making. And finally, we are the ones who are paying all of you to represent and protect our best interests, not yours. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for the delegations? Councillor Kakish.
Thank you, Chair. It's more just observation on a few of the things that you've said, and I don't want to open up old wounds, but you talked about electrification, and as you may know, we would have had the north-south in place now had it not been cancelled in 2000.
I don't hear you well, sorry.
I'm saying I don't want to open up old wounds, but the north-south line would have been running now and servicing the southern communities that you talk about, including mine in Riverside South, had that plan not been cancelled. And you talk about electrification, but the difference of extending the O train to Bowesville versus electrifying, which we'd all love to see, is $100 million versus $1 billion. So as much as, and you criticize the city staff about, their ambitions about establishing or, reaching those goals. I think we have to be realistic. There's money pressures.
Councillor, do you have a question for the delegation?
No, but I think it's important. I heard a lot of information.
I understand that, but it's not a debate. The public delegation doesn't get a chance to respond, so if you have a question, ask a question.
And there are bus lines that service as southern communities, the 144
But you have
services
to transfer,
Finley
and
Creek.
it takes 3 times the time.
Yeah, so I think we're all trying to ensure we hear what you're saying, and we're trying to ensure that we're doing everything we can to encourage public transportation, but we have to be realistic about cost and realistic about people's behaviors in terms of driving as well. So I just wanted to point those 2 points. Thank you.
I just have a question for you, sir.
Unfortunately, that's the point I was trying. No, that's what I'm trying to make. Under the rules, you unfortunately don't have a chance to ask a question.
Quick one. You're talking about $100 million in 2030 that it would cost. How much would this $100 million cost in 2031 as it's specified for this planning in the master plan? So I understand you're all experts, you're all doing your best. Thank you for that. But I don't think all the options are being looked into.
No, and I appreciate your point of view. I appreciate your point of view, but we actually do have a question for you, I hope, from Councillor Foley.
Moi, c'était plutôt un commentaire. Merci d'avoir parlé en anglais, mais sachez que la prochaine fois que vous venez au comité, vous pouvez parler en français, puis vous allez être... on a des... il y a de la traduction simultanée, alors sentez-vous confortable. C'est plus un commentaire qu'autre chose. Vous parlez très bien en anglais, mais évidemment, je le savais par votre nom que vous parlez français, alors ne vous gênez pas.
Non, il n'y a pas de problème. Merci. On me l'a offert, mais j'ai fini ma présentation cette nuit. Merci.
Okay, don't leave just yet. There may be other questions. Are there any other questions for the delegation? Okay, thank you very much. And next is Graham Sibthorpe, and Graham will be followed by Rob Bales. Mr. Bales is indicated as the last speaker on the list, so if there's someone in the room that still wishes to speak to this matter, if they could sign up in the corner there underneath the television screen. Otherwise, Mr. Bales will be the last presenter. Good morning, Mr. Sibthorpe.
Sorry, is this one working?
Yes, it is. Hello? Yep, you're on. Off you go. Thanks.
Great, thanks. Okay, I'm here for the same reason as many other people, and particularly Bruce, concerns about the parkway and the widening of that, and it makes absolutely no sense to us at all. And not only is it continuing to be looked at, but even with the Trillium line going in, then it's still being talked about that you have to have the widening, even with that. I think it's time that called a stop to that, to spending all the time and resources on widening, when in fact what is really being looked for is something that doesn't require widening. And I think what I would anticipate is that you look ahead to what some of the other options would be for improving the service without having to do any more widening. It could be things like routes, different routes in which people would come in rather than through the parkway, through using buses, having HOV lanes, and other things of that nature. And I've already been looking at that from the point of view of Riverside Drive, because Riverside Drive was a nightmare for us, and we even now have had to start looking at how we can turn that into more of a complete street. And that would include buses and maybe an HOV lane and so on. The interesting thing about that is that there's already in the works for Riverside Drive as a network concept, transit signal priority and queue jump lanes between Hunt Club Road and Heron Road, and there's also things for the widening of some of the roads south of Hunt Club in the plans. That's scheduled for 2031, but could in fact be moved ahead to 2018, I'm told. With that in place, I think that it's quite conceivable to have vehicles and buses in particular, coming from south of the airport through Riverside Drive, rather than plugging up more of the parkway. And I think it's time that the city staff started looking at not how we can widen the parkway, but how we can consider and perhaps use some of these other ways of controlling and getting the people through. I mean, my example would be the Riverside Drive, but there's probably a number of other ways in which this can be, other roads in which this can be done, and look at it in its entirety. Like, there's a lot of people now going to be living south of the airport, and they're all going to want to come into town some way, and not let them all focus on just the parkway, but look at all the different ways in which people can be brought in, and so on. And I can certainly, even now, I can make the case as to why it would be beneficial for people to, if they had a bus that would bring them into Riverside Drive and bring it down to either all the way downtown, or which is what the 87 bus does, or to the Billings Bridge, where they could then pick up an O train. So I don't think that anyone has really given any thought to the scale of development that's going on, and how that should be looked at holistically, not as individual bits and pieces. So that's and I sent you information about what we had already been looking at from the Riverside Drive, and we already, in fact, things are already happening there as a result of that, in terms of increasing this for pedestrian crossing the roads, starting to monitor the speeds, which are totally out of control, and so on and so forth. So not something that you would necessarily do all overnight, but to start thinking of it, what it's going to look like, and working towards it on a longer term basis. So that was the main thing. The other part of what
Sorry, sir, I'm going to have to ask you to wrap up. Your 30 seconds over your time.
Okay. The one other thing that I've been involved with is the ramps, and I've spent a lot of time personally looking at the amount of traffic in all these different areas, and it makes no sense to me that you need to have the ramps there for the traffic. In fact, there appears to be very little cut-through traffic, if any. Most of the traffic is people who are changing, moving into where they live in the communities. The projections forward seem to
Again, sir, I'm going to have to ask you to wrap up. These other delegations waiting to speak.
One of the things, they're projected forward as to a lot more than today. But in fact, it's a well-developed community and not many new houses being built, so there's no reason to think that it's going to be a lot more a few years down the road than it is now. So the whole thing makes no sense to me. What is more important is a complete street that connects Riverside to Bank Street, and that is that's something that's only partially being looked at right now.
Thank you, sir. Are there any questions for the delegation? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to call the next delegate, which is Rob Bales. Morning, Mr. Bales. You have 5 minutes. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman and committee members, I was going to start by reading the official plan, but I perhaps don't have quite enough time, so I won't. But I will touch on it. Looking firstly at the official plan road classification summary, table 1, and I'm not going to read it across my heart. There's 30 pages of roads in there. 37 are classified as urban arterial. And of those 37, those with right-of-way widths of 26 meters or less, which is Walkley Road, that's narrow in terms of the usual width, which is 33 and 37 meters. So Walkley, in other words, is not a wide road. If I might just note, if page 12 was showing up there, I think that's the only photograph we have of the west segment of Walkley Road. I don't know if your magic can make page 12 show up on the screen or not, but it might be helpful. Of the 37 urban arterial roads with right-of-way widths of 26 meters or less, we have 4 in the city.
Sorry, I'm just going to interrupt. Can we get slide 12 up on the deck?
Sorry for the technological intervention. Am I being charged for time?
No, time has stopped. Time has stopped. Don't worry.
I'll prattle on while he's trying to find page 12. Walkley Road, from the Parkway to the railway overpass, is a double-sided. That is looking westbound, I believe, on Walkley Road. You'll see residential uses on both sides of the road. It's a three-quarter shot. You don't quite get the full sense of the full alignment of near enough to a kilometer of road running straight down from the Parkway towards Riverside Drive, with residential homes on both sides of it, with driveways accessing onto that arterial. We don't build arterials anymore in this city that have that configuration, where you have to back out of your driveway onto a 4-lane undivided road into traffic, which obviously will be made more difficult and dangerous if the Walkley Road off-ramp should be approved. So I'm focusing down hard on the official plan attributes, because I think the report as it's been prepared didn't sufficiently address the constraints that council faces in considering the required attributes of an arterial road. So I'll just read, they're very brief, I'll just read them in a minute. There's only 4 roads in the city, though. Relatively narrow alignment with double-sided residential backing onto the street. There's Walkley Road, the subject here, Smythe from Dauphin to Saint-Laurent, Lees from Maine to Chestnut, and Woodruff from the Ottawa River Parkway to Adirondack. So we're really looking at a very small number of streets that have this configuration, and we're now looking at imposing a significantly increased traffic volume onto that road. I accept the point made in the report that the traffic volume increase may not be substantial until there just might be a problem on the Airport Parkway and everybody wants to get off, and that happens, as we know, all the time. We'll continue, notwithstanding the 4-laning, because we're still going to have backups at Hunt Club Road. We haven't changed that configuration. The flow-through traffic to the airport will be improved, but we're still going to back up with traffic trying to get off at Hunt Club, and that can plug that whole road, even if it's 4 lanes, I would suggest. The classification requirement is vehicular access to adjacent properties should be controlled to minimize turning movements and to reduce conflicts between travel modes. I don't see that that was sufficiently addressed. The road has become, essentially, it's a 4-lane road, it's essentially becoming a 3-lane road with bike paths on either side, the middle lane being a turn lane. However, it is my understanding that those are only painted markings on the road. Painted markings on the road work fine when the weather is good. They don't work in the wintertime. So we end up with the same speedway that we have today being available to bad drivers who choose to go anywhere up toward 100 kilometers an hour on that road, because the middle lane is not sufficiently designed to inhibit that kind of traffic. We get wacko drivers on that road, as we do on many others. We need to consider the way in which that traffic is being controlled, and I think it's implicit in the official plan that that be considered. I did raise this at a couple of the public meetings, and I did make a submission, although I didn't copy it to the whole committee because, what can I tell you, you guys don't need 6 more pages, but I did submit it to the planner and also to Councillor Brockington. So essentially what I'm asking you to do, I suspect I'm probably getting close, is to ask that council give direction to staff that should you choose to go ahead and approve this report and Walkley off-ramp becomes a necessity. I'm not necessarily in support of it. I don't think the evidence is really there for it. But other delegations have made those points. Let's make sure that the traffic modification arrangements that will assist Walkley Road as a fairly unique road in the city are properly considered. So I would ask direction to staff to provide for such hard surfacing as, throat islands, texturing, curb widenings, throat islands, this sort of thing, in order to properly control. I know in the report there's consideration of certain specific turning locations on Walkley. I would ask that we just make sure we've got hard surfacing on that road and rely on the hard surfacing, which works, in my view, compared to just painted markings, which in my view do not. I'd also note we're putting 2 bike lanes down on either side of the road, and that, from a turning traffic perspective, we have to make sure that those bike lanes are properly protected as well. And I'm not sure whether they really have been in the report as presented.
I'm going to have to ask you to wrap up.
I'm only 56 seconds over. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am wrapped.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the delegation? And I'm going to suggest whatever you've circulated to Councillor Brockington, please feel free to send it to all council members.
Yes, it would have happened if life wasn't the way life can be. So
but feel free to do that between now and council if you wish.
All right.
Again, are there any questions for the? Nope. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So we're going to move to questions to staff now, and I'm going to ask VVG to come up to the table as well and to help with some of that. I've got a couple of questions. I only have on the list at this point Councillor Deans, so if anybody else wants to, okay. We'll go with that. So I guess the first question, and it segues well from our last presenter about different ways to do traffic calming or hard surfacing. We heard that from another delegation as well. And so the question I'm going to ask you, obviously the EA is a very high-level document. As we get more granular and get closer to the potential of constructing any of these phases, is the document, is the plan still open to tweaking, still working with the community to address some of those concerns around traffic calming?
Yes, Chair. As long as the environmental impact is not affected, because this is an EA, and I think we've covered all that, the footprint of everything. So those are really detailed design issues, and they can always be incorporated.
Okay. And is it unusual to be doing or having this kind of discussion or refinement after the EA process?
It's always part of detailed design.
Okay. We heard a comment from one of the earlier presenters that there appears to be 2 reports out there, an earlier report and one that's just come out, and there's a difference in the reports. Can either Vivi or Frank, if you can speak to why there are 2 reports and
Yes, the report that I inadvertently sent Mr. Meunier and Ms. Ursel was from a report that the consultants were on the job for approximately 2 months, and originally we thought that the roadway widening may not be required along Leicester Road.
Chair, if I can intervene. As with every study, as we progress through it, we do more and more analysis, and this is just one of those other issues, particularly for the forecasting. So we had some refinements, as we have refinements in the design as we proceed through the EA, and this is just one of those. So the earlier version was very, very, very preliminary, and just to give us an indication of where we're standing. But the other second document is the one that reflects the work, and it reflects the elements here, and it was used for noise mitigation as well.
So can you give the committee a sense of, between document 1 and document 2, what additional work would have been done to refine the results?
Yes, I'd be glad to, Mr. Chair. As Mr. McKinney was saying, that document that went out was really about two months off from the starting gates of the project. One of the things we drilled into and did more analysis was the plan for Albion Road. And again, we talked about Leicester Road being the tale of two sides of Albion Road. And we came to see that there's no certainty that Albion Road would be widened itself. And this, in turn, would mean that there would be more travelers northbound from the Leitrim community on Bank Street. So that's the specific aspect of the analysis that changed.
And as part of the joint study with the NCC, Albion Road widening was not included in that report. So there would be no guarantee from NCC that they would ever approve an Albion Road widening between Leitrim and Leicester.
Okay. The other thing that we heard quite a bit about is, why this and why not Trillium, or why this before Trillium, and could there be a delay? I'm wondering if you could speak to that, Ms. Chi, about sort of where Trillium fits into all this and whether that's the solution, if you will.
Yes, Chair. The whole network was looked at as part of the Transportation Master Plan, first off, so we have to, they're all linked together. So through that process, it was determined that for the north-south movement serving the south community, that both the Trillium Line extension and the widening of the parkway were needed. As for the timing, the Trillium Line is part of Stage 2, so that is underway in terms of the EAs are being finalized, and we're proceeding with that. And the plan is to have that completed by 2023 for all, the south, the east, and the west. The parkway itself is actually, from our report, you can see that this whole project, which took the parkway and Leicester, there are actually 3 different sections of the project. So the first section, first priority, is the Brookfield to Hunt Club. And that was supposed to be a Phase 1 project to be completed by 2019 in the Transportation Master Plan, but due to current financial revenue conditions, that has been pushed out to beyond 2019 into Phase 2. So it's sitting somewhere between 2020 and 2025 for funding. And through this section between Brookfield and Hunt Club, the Trillium Line is already in service. So the Trillium Line itself, the service it's providing, is not capturing all of the demand. So particularly for this section, we need to widen the parkway because transit is already there.
Thank you for that clarification. I wonder if you could also speak to a little bit about process. So everybody, I know my colleagues around the table understand this, but just so everybody in the room, as to what we're actually doing today. In other words, there seems to be a suggestion that we're voting today to build. Maybe you can explain how the EA process works and what the next steps are between now and approval and actual building.
Yes, it starts with the TNP, which has a line on the map, and then from there, to make it, to bring it forward for implementation, we have to conduct an environmental assessment, which spells out the shape, the design, all the impacts of that line on a map, and that's what you have today. So the report here today is approving the plan that you had approved the scope of in May 2014, I believe. So that So that's just, we were directed to do the work. Here it is. Here's the study. This is what you can have. As for implementation, that is always dependent on funding and also council priorities at the time as we go from year to year with the annual budgeting process. So that is how council can control when projects are implemented.
That goes to the point I think that Councillor Deans made around one of the pieces that when it comes to budget she may have a different opinion. But just so everybody understands, the EA is not something that you can make substitutes in. You can't pull things out. In other words, we need to approve the EA as you're presenting it or not approve the EA as you're presenting it. Is that correct?
That's correct. It's the whole thing. They're done together, so there's no piecemealing. One section affects the design of another, so that's why we presented both Airport Parkway and Leicester together.
Okay, thank you for that. First speaker on the list then is Councillor Deans.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you all for the work on this file. I'm really struggling with this piece between Leicester Road, between Albion and Bank Street. And I'm actually very surprised to see a report come out on Monday, May 30th, that contradicts the report that has been in the public domain since November 2014. So the November 2014 report said that section was not needed, and the report that came out on Monday and was not, by the way, sent to members of council, was posted on the website but was not sent to members of council, contradicts that. And if I just heard correctly, the answer was, in 2014, it's gone through refinement since then, but in 2014 there was consideration of the widening of Albion. Is that the answer that you gave?
The assumption back then was that Albion Road would be widened or could be widened prior to that. That means that if more traffic can be accommodated at Albion Road, there's a better chance that Leicester Road would not have to be widened between Bank Street and Albion Road.
So here's the thing. As I understand it, Albion Road was ruled out of the TMP in 2013 because of the environmentally sensitive nature of the wetland, and that work was done in 2013 and ruled out. So why would Parsons then, in November 2014, say there was an overcapacity issue, if that was the reason?
Chair, if I may clarify, widening of Albion south of Leicester is still in the TMP, but it's not in the affordable network, so it's sitting beyond 2031. So we have not completed an EA for it. So if we look at the overall network, it would address the north-south movement, the widening of Albion, onto Leicester, then onto the widened Parkway. So that would be the movement that the Transportation Master Plan has suggested to address the demand from the south.
It's not adding up to me. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be difficult. It's just not making sense. If we knew that it wasn't in the affordability network, Albion, then we would have taken that into account in the Parsons report in 2014. So I don't understand what changed to Monday to do such an about-face.
Mr. Chair, so it is unfortunate that a really early draft report was circulated, and I guess the most interesting part of this is that was in November of 2014. So 3 weeks later, in December, when we had the working group meetings with the communities, we had already made the change. Okay, so when I have in front of me the consultation group meeting agenda presentation, and it's clearly showing the amendment we made in that 3-week period a year and a half ago. Okay, so that's when we were showing the 900 vehicles per hour on Albion Road, or on Leicester Road east of Albion, and that's the same information we presented at the first public open house in January 2015. So this is a very old story. It's just unfortunate that really early document went out recently, because the story's been really...
So was there a revised document that the public could access on the website between the November 2014 document and Monday?
Yeah, so all the conclusions of that technical document are on the public meeting exhibits, which are on the website, and they have it on the website.
And it indicates a correction?
That correction was made on the website more than a year ago. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm just wondering if, Ms. Cheery, if you would agree that the widening of Leicester east of Albion would result in an overcapacity issue?
The analysis and the presentation we had, it shows, yes, there is a slight overcapacity comparatively. There is an increase in demand for the section east of Albion. But it is smaller, the demand, as you can see here. East of Albion is an extra 100 vehicles per hour compared to west of Albion.
Right. So I would say to my council colleagues, we may all have differing views of if and when a road widening is ever justified, but I think we could probably all agree that a widening that would result in an overcapacity isn't justified, and we should not be going down that road, if you will. So you can read my comments but in the report, but you'll see that I don't agree with that section, and I will find ways to get it out in the future. I also, though, want to talk about the part that I actually think is justified, and that's the piece of the Airport Parkway between Brookfield and Hunt Club Road. And I can tell you that on a daily basis, my constituents report, especially at peak periods, significant congestion, backups, idling cars, idling vehicles that I don't think anyone would think is environmentally acceptable. So we heard from one of the presenters today, he doesn't think there is an issue, I just disagree with that, but he suggested that even the widening would not result in relieving the pressure at that pinch point. And I'd just like to hear from the staff if you agree with his assessment or if it in fact will reduce that congestion.
Mr. Chair, yes, so that is our analysis that the first